The empty chair. Every morning, my mom and I sat at the kitchen table, the soft morning light filtering through the curtains, painting the room with a golden glow. The smell of coffee brewing was the soundtrack to our mornings, filling the air with a comforting warmth that always felt like home. We talked about everything and nothing. Her plans for the day, the latest news she'd read, what we were having for dinner that night, and the occasional silly thing that would make us both laugh uncontrollably. Those moments were small, but they were the heartbeat of our relationship, the threads that kept us connected. The first morning without her felt like a cruel joke. I woke up to the usual sound of the coffee maker gurgling in the kitchen, a sound that had been a part of my life for as long as I could remember. But something was different. The house felt too quiet, too empty. I didn't think much of it at first. She was probably just running a little late. Maybe she'd stayed up late watching a movie or reading. I knocked on her door softly, expecting to hear her voice on the other side, telling me to come back later. When there was no answer, I tried the handle. The door creaked open, revealing her sitting in the same chair she always sat in, her hands folded in her lap. The room was still, too still, and the silence that filled the space suddenly felt suffocating. It took me a moment to register what I was seeing, and in that moment, everything froze. My heart raced as I rushed to her side, calling her name, but there was no response. Her skin was cold, her face pale and unmoving. Panic set in as I shook her gently, praying that she would open her eyes, that this was some cruel misunderstanding. But it wasn't. I called for help, my voice shaking, but I knew deep down it was too late. The warmth that had once filled the room was gone, replaced by an overwhelming coldness that seeped into my bones. Paramedics arrived minutes later, but they were just as helpless as I was. There was nothing they could do. My mom, the woman who had always been my rock, the one who made everything seem okay, was gone. The days that followed were a blur of shock, grief, and disbelief. I found myself wandering through the house, unable to comprehend the reality of what had happened. I didn't know how to function without her. She had been there for everything. My first heartbreak, my triumphs, my failures. She was the one who stayed up late with me when I couldn't sleep, who always knew just what to say when I felt lost. Now, it was as if the world had stopped spinning, and I was caught in an endless void of emptiness. Her funeral was small. She wasn't the type to want anything extravagant, and that's exactly how she would have wanted it. Still, I couldn't help but feel a sense of wrongness as I sat there, surrounded by people who had known her, but none of us truly knowing how to say goodbye. She was simply gone. The finality of it was crushing. I moved through the motions of life, trying to keep up appearances, but everything felt off. The house that had once been filled with laughter and conversation now felt suffocatingly quiet. The kitchen table, once the center of our mornings, was now just a reminder of the hole in my heart. Every morning, I would wake up to the same routine. The smell of coffee brewing, the sound of it filling the air, but there was no one sitting across from me. No warm smile to greet me. No one to ask how I slept or what I had planned to do that day. It was just me, alone in the silence. The chair at the table remained empty, an ever-present reminder of what I had lost. At first, I tried to convince myself that I could just push through, that I could move on and find a new rhythm without her. But that empty chair, that absence in the room, kept pulling me back to the reality that she was never coming back. It didn't matter how many times I went through the motions, how many times I tried to fill the silence with other things. Her absence was always there, right in front of me. I would sit there in the mornings, staring at the empty chair, waiting for her to walk in, to tell me about her day, to ask me about mine. But that never happened. The silence would stretch on, unbearable and suffocating. I would sip my coffee, but it didn't taste the same. The warmth, once comforting, now felt hollow. I would stare out the window, watching the world go by, but nothing seemed to matter anymore. Without her, the world felt different, distant, cold, and uninviting. I tried to keep myself busy. I cleaned the house, rearranged things, even cooked meals, but no matter what I did, I couldn't escape the empty chair. It was always there, always waiting, always reminding me that things would never be the same. And then one day, I realized something. I wasn't just waiting for her to come back. I was waiting for the pain to go away, for the ache in my chest to disappear, for the grief to lift and allow me to move on. But the truth was, I didn't want that. I didn't want to forget her, to let her go of the memories that were now all I had left. I didn't want to stop feeling the loss, because to do that would be to stop honoring her, to stop cherishing everything she had given me. So I kept sitting at the table every morning, the empty chair across from me, a silent witness to my grief. I kept talking to her, even though I knew she couldn't hear me. I told her about my day, about the small things that made me smile, or the things that made me cry. And every time, I imagined her sitting there, smiling back at me, offering the comfort that only she could give. The chair remained empty, but in my mind, she was always there, listening, understanding. I don't know how long it will take for the pain to ease, or if it ever will. But every day, I sit at that table, the coffee brewing, the light streaming in, and the empty chair across from me. And I find that, little by little, I'm learning to live with the silence,